Good evening, all. Welcome to the Selectmen's meeting, March 8th, 2018. First item on the agenda is the ballot question. Mr. Ramsey?
This is customarily, Madam Chair, when the warrant committee and selectmen discussed whether or not there would be any ballot questions specific to 2.5 exclusions or overrides. This year, I believe there are no overrides, simply the one question on the ballot, which you saw, regarding the debt exclusion if the Carroll Community Center Improvement Project is approved at town meeting.
And so what you would like to have would be us just to vote on that one ballot question?
You don't even have to do that, actually, just acknowledge it, because it's
Okay.
on the election warrant that you're signing, and it was on the warrant for the town meeting that you already signed.
Excellent.
So
Any question?
Oh, since we have two warrant articles,
Mhm.
one for the boilers and one for Carroll,
Mhm.
do we want, should we have two ballot questions? Just in case the one,
What I think, if I'm, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the thinking is that the boilers will be taken care of with free cash. If that, for example, is the ballot question that is approved, probably rather than going out for, in debt, we would simply use free cash for the boilers. If in fact we end up with both articles approved, 11 and 15, then in fact it would be just a single out, correct?
We would borrow for the $3.4 million.
I see, and,
But when the decisions were made by the board to split it into two
right,
articles, to logistically make it work,
right.
we decided we'd use free cash, or we assume we're going to use free cash for the one because it's a standalone vote.
Okay,
If the second article gets voted, it would be to authorize borrowing for the $3.4 million. And that's what we would need the debt exclusion for.
okay. Does that answer the question?
it does, I'm not sure, you know, there's, since both these items are such a hot topic, and some of the questions we're getting is how you're gonna pay for it. So I'm just concerned that we're making a decision just to put one warrant article on the ballot, and I don't know if you need to make that decision tonight without getting input from warrant and maybe capital. Because one of the questions that does come up, even just for the boilers, is how are we gonna pay for it? Is it gonna be capital, or, you know, are we gonna use free cash or debt exclusion? And given the significant amount of conversations that we had last year around free cash, it's just, I don't know if it's prudent not to have discussions over having a second warrant article.
Well,
So what's the deadline?
It's already passed.
Oh, for the ballot? All right.
the other thing that I was thinking about is that we did use free cash to take care of the air conditioners at exactly the same cost.
I'm not saying there's a right or
Right.
wrong, I just think it could potentially be another obstacle.
It's interesting. Mr. Jeffries?
I understand, you know, what Mrs. Hunter is articulating, and I think that the prudent thing to do at this point, I really don't think we have a choice.
Well, I think we've run out of time.
I think we're past the opportunity to go back. I also think that we have, we certainly have adequate resources to pay for it.
Right.
To pay for it. So we, Mr. Ramsey, unless I'm mistaken, we'd have adequate resources to pay for it from free cash, as Madam Chair has explained, and we would only need the one ballot question.
That is correct, yeah. I have not in my career considered borrowing for $600,000. I don't know that we...
Because you're very rich.
Right, okay.
No, not for me, Mr. Jeffries, in my professional career.
Right. But I appreciate your point. So noted, and I think, as you said, the very significant thing will be the larger discussion about both articles and how we're going to proceed with the two articles. So thank you very much. All right, so if there are no further questions, then I think we'll just take that under consideration and be noted. Good. The next item is the discussion about the Dover Community Compact. And this is such an interesting thing. I've had the privilege of being somewhat involved with it just in the last couple of weeks. But again, Mr. Ramsey, I'd love it if you would explain the history of this, the community compact as an initiative out of the Baker office.
The Baker administration, Madam Chair, created this community compact program several years ago. And the idea behind it was to elicit communities and incentivize them to sign on to the community compact and pick what they call a best practice to implement in their community. In Dover's experience, this became real for us 2 weeks ago or so when the governor's office called and asked if they could come down and meet with you, Madam Chair, to talk about the program. They came down last week and we expected to hear about the program, and they sort of wanted to sign us up on the spot. Fortuitously, the finance team is looking at upgrading their computer systems so that they would be not only becoming current with the current technology, but integrating the functions between the assessors, the accountant, and the treasurer collector, which are now not currently computerized. So this has sort of come together. We're not, the details are not final in terms of what the finance people are looking at, but it looks like it might work that we could partner with the Commonwealth on this community compact for that project of upgrading the systems and integrating them. It's still tentative. They're working out the budget and the timetable, but the indications from the Commonwealth are that they may be willing to grant us $25,000 towards this project if all of the details to come together
It's wonderful.
in a timing that's correct, that's good for all of us.
I was so interested that with the 356 towns in Massachusetts, 350 have already signed up with the compact. So they're actually looking to close this out, to move to what they're calling Compact 201, I believe, which is going to be more about regional initiatives, bringing different communities together around different issues. But they are eager to get the remaining 6 communities all signed up, which is why they really didn't want to leave here without having the application filled out. So I thank you very much, and to Mr. Lane too, for being, I know, a resource for us in terms of his ability to flesh out what the software might be, what the necessities might be, and to help with that application. So
He's been working with the accountant and the assessor.
yeah, that's great.
The joint
It's
effort.
terrific. I remember, didn't she, though, she had the good fortune of meeting with Mr. Lane that afternoon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we drafted him to come and actually do the application for us.
Yeah, that's great. Terrific. Do you have any questions about it?
No, I think it's a great idea. We heard a little bit about this at MMA. This was part of the presentation. I thought was a really very interesting thing that the cities and towns are taking the initiative of. It doesn't seem to be any downside
Right,
for us.
exactly. Mrs. Hunter, any?
I have no comments.
Okay. Well, I thought it was a great opportunity for us, and I'm always so pleased when the state is actually moving quickly to help us finish up something. Nice to have done it this way. And I'm very grateful that we have such a worthwhile project. It's just perfect. Perfect. So I thank you for that, Mr. Ramsey.
You're welcome.
So, the ambulance rates, it looks as though the town's past practice has been to set the rate to at least 110% of the Medicare rate. The current rates are at or above this level. From Mr. Lane, he recommends that the board leave the rates at the current levels for 2018. So, any issues with that, board?
No.
No.
I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the rates. 2018 ambulance rates as requested by Dave Ramsey and Chief Hughes.
Mhm. Excellent. Do I hear a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Excellent. Other business. I'm sorry to say that Mrs. Pugach is still ill, and so I have kind of a piece of business that will involve her, but I wanted to make a nomination, if possible, and appoint a new member of Open Space Committee. And I'll tell you what the detail is and what Mrs. Pugach will be able to help us with. I received an email from Amy Moot, and we've had a representative on Open Space from Parks and Rec, who has been Eric Loeffler. And my understanding is that he is not able to continue. Amy believes that his term actually expired, so that there should be no conflict moving to our new appointee. But if in fact, after we speak to Mrs. Pugach, if we find out that he still has some time left in his term, then Amy will proceed, get a letter of resignation for Mr. Loeffler, because I would like to tell you all that Valerie Lynn is interested in joining Open Space. And so if anyone has anything or any question, otherwise, if I'll go ahead and appoint. She's been wonderful. She works a lot in town, and I think it would be a great asset for her to join Open Space. So Val, congratulations, and I'd love to move to appoint Val Lynn to Open Space.
Subject to,
Well, I believe Mr.
right.
Loeffler has left
Okay.
anyway, but it's just about the actual details of whether we need a resignation. But
Okay.
yes, Val Lynn to take his spot.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Again, Eric, if you're watching, thank you, and Val, best wishes. Glad you're here. Thank you.
On other items of business, Madam Chair, may I make one comment with regards to outside other business items?
Of
Are we still
course.
on the other business items
Yes.
issue? I had the pleasure of representing the Board of Selectmen this week at the Dover Sherburne High School,
You did.
Madam Chair,
Wow.
where they watch us, by the way, the senior class, I'm told. Mrs. Kenny is laughing at that, so I think there's some skepticism over there. I was told, I can only repeat what I was told, that they're watching us probably as we speak, doubtful, but Mrs. Kenny is saying doubtful, but we...
Those that have power.
It was a great opportunity. Mr. Brendan O'Hagan and Liz Millard and Tom Bork were great, fun to be with. Their students were energetic and insightful. They offered some great questions, and it was really fun to have the opportunity to interact with the students at Dover Sherburne High School. I did it last year. I know you've done it in the past, and it was a great opportunity to tell them a little bit about what we do and your leadership and Robin's leadership last year. And they all wondered how Mrs. Hunter got through the rail trail.
Well, if they invite me, I'll be happy to talk to them.
That's great, and I'm so glad, because it was fun to see the emails of the back and forthing, and I'm so glad you were able to go. We
Well-
were lucky to hear from you.
Well, thank you. It was fun. It was fun. So we're reminded we have such a great school and a great system. It's really, really high quality teachers.
And we have a warrant article being put forward by two
Students.
seniors.
Yes, we do.
There, so I mean, it's,
They will be attending our meeting next Wednesday.
oh, wonderful, excellent.
Civics 101.
It really is.
Be nice,
Yeah,
just making sure.
it's great, well, I'm glad you added, good. So the other bit of business is that we do want to authorize for Mr. Hughes the snow and ice budget. A total of $384,023.22 has been spent from the snow and ice budget through Monday, my gosh, leaving a balance of $35,976.78. We have invoices both in hand and anticipated, totaling about $13,000, and given the pending storm tomorrow night, as of that was night before last, I'm requesting an additional $75,000. Are there any questions?
Boy, was that timely, huh?
Oh, my
Very.
God.
I would just like to add, Madam Chair, what
I
again,
know,
spectacular job
I know.
that Mr. Hughes and his team and Bobby Tosi and the foreman and the maintenance of all of the vehicles, how well they performed again
I
under
know.
and other trying circumstances, but very, very well done. We're really lucky.
Oh, we're so fortunate. And I know that there are many people in town that don't have power, and I am so sorry for that.
63%
Of the town this
Mhm.
morning, was it
still today.
still
This
today?
afternoon, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it all due to trees down
Mhm.
primarily?
Eversource just sent out an email.
Finally.
Suggesting we be prepared for multiple days.
Wow.
I noticed even on Haven Street, although Haven Street has power, hanging right over, pulling down some of the huge cable lines is half a tree. So it is holding the line down, and I can't imagine that it can hold indefinitely, nor can I imagine that anyone can work on that line
Right.
without killing the power. So, I think you're right. I think the town is going to have to be prepared.
Yeah, compared to the towns around us,
Right.
I think we're exceptionally lucky. Just driving through the section of Needham where I travel to work, South Street in Needham, between Central and coming into Dover, all the way up to Charles River is closed. It's being detoured. So, and that's now 24 hours, say, after
Right.
the bulk of the storm. So
You can't get up my street.
really,
Is everyone parking at the bottom? How do you do that?
Well, you have to, this morning was quite tricky. There's a telephone pole at the bottom of the road with
On
live wires, and there were numerous trees on the street. So now you have to, and there's trees down on one of the intersecting roads, so you have to go through neighborhoods, and today for a while you couldn't get out because Pine Street was closed too. So
wow.
there's a lot, you'd be surprised at how many roads are closed, how many trees are down.
Mm.
And the problem is the live wires on the road.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
exactly.
a good point.
Numerous.
I think
Exactly.
we because we have so few through streets
Right.
Right,
that you
It's
don't
tricky,
notice
right.
the side streets, because a
Right.
lot of the side streets, like yours and mine, are dead ends.
Mhm.
They're the only people who go up the street, and I would say the majority of the streets off of the main streets
Right.
are dead ends,
Right,
cul-de-sacs.
right.
So you wouldn't notice that.
And the wires and the water are just the scariest combination.
Right, and they say, to stay away from the wires,
Right,
like you
right.
shouldn't,
Right.
there's chance for electric shock if you get close to
Right,
them.
right.
So you shouldn't really be trying to walk around them, you
Right,
should just
right.
try and avoid them.
Right. Scary. Well, I think I would like to make a motion that we accept Mr. Hughes' recommendation for an additional $75,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Again, Mr. Hughes, thank you so much for what you and your crew do for this town.
And the hours that they
Oh
will
my
put in
gosh.
last night, tonight, tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, and it almost always seems to be through the dark of the night. I mean,
Always.
it's seldom 10 to 4 in the morning. It's tough.
And it's always Sunday.
Yeah.
Right.
So thank you very much. We've come to our special licenses, Mr. Jeffries.
The special licensings. This week, we have the pleasure of approving, Madam Chair, a 50th birthday party. And I'm sure we got invitations to that, right?
I'm sure.
On March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 50th birthday party at Hale Reservation. And Kate, did you receive invitations? We're for birthday parties. So on March 17th, the 50th birthday party at Hale Reservation. May 12th, anniversary celebration at Elm Bank. And May 25th, a wedding at Elm Bank.
Wonderful.
Would move that we accept the licenses, the special liquor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Great. And Mrs. Canny, do we have any comments, questions? Okay. And there are no other questions in the audience?
Do you want liaison updates?
Oh, I'd love it.
Okay.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful.
Okay, so capital budgets on Monday had what they had hoped would be their final meeting, but it isn't. And, the purpose of the meeting was to vote on Carroll and the boilers as separate line items. So there was a tremendous amount of discussion. The Capital Budgets Committee did take a vote on the $3.4 million proposal for Carroll. And what came out of that vote and the discussion was that the Capital Budget Committee is not in favor of the Carroll Community Center. What they would very much like is to reopen the due diligence and the options for that building, given that what they have heard and all the open hearings. And so Capital Budgets voted not to recommend that particular proposal. There was then a lot of discussion about the boilers. What really came across as in that discussion was that everybody understood how important it was to change the boilers. It was a very interesting discussion. There were only 6 members there. There were 2 in favor of replacing the boilers, 2 in favor of deferring the replacement until they got more information, and 2 that were on the fence, and 1 that was not in attendance. So Capital Budgets decided that they would defer a vote on that, wait until the open hearings, get some feedback from them, and then reconvene as a committee to vote on that. And these are just recommendations from
Right.
Capital
So
Budget.
2, 2, 2, and 1.
2, 2, 2, and 0. No, one wasn't there.
Right, that's what I
Right.
mean, so that's how you're.
Right.
Right, okay.
But
Thank
it
you
was
very
a
much.
very healthy discussion.
May I ask a question, Madam Chair, for Mrs. Hunter?
Of course.
Mrs. Hunter, did you get the sense, with regards to the Article 15, the $3 million, was there a sense that there's an appetite for something other than the 3.4, larger than, smaller than? Where do you
So
think?
that's an excellent question, because one of the focuses was, one of the members of Capital Budgets pulled out the 2010 committee report. And when you read the committee report, at the end of the day, it said that this is a town building. It's a building that the town should preserve, that the selectmen should work to keep that building, to maintain that building, and that it is an asset to the community. So that being said, that's exactly what's happening right now. So the discussion was, that's the problem, we don't know. Capital Budget, certain members of Capital Budget had the sense that because of all this great dialogue that's happened over the last month or 2, that we owe it to new community members to go back and say, all right, well, does it make sense just to repair the building and continue on the path that we are on? Would it make sense to spend a little bit more, and how much is that little bit more? And do that little bit more that's going to make it a little bit more of a special place? So that was the conversation. I think what was most, the one sentiment that rang true is everybody really is in favor of coming up with a solution that works best for the town with respect to Carroll. I didn't get the sense that anybody was against it and wanted to tear it down. They just wanted to have a process where we could get additional input in light of the fact that 8 to 15 years have transpired since the decision was made. And the one member that pulled out that report, I think everybody should go back and read that report, because it really It is exactly what's going on
It's
today.
exactly what we're
Right,
trying to do.
right. So that was the conversation. So there wasn't a sense of, we want a bigger building, we want to spend more. The sense was, we would just like to have some time when we're not in a rush to be able to vet this with members of the community.
And that's an interesting point, and I really appreciate the update. I really do, because I think you've described the complexity of a long process.
Exactly.
And I'm sure that the feelings are, even though it's dispassionate on the one hand, I'm sure that people do have some feelings around this question. The one thing I would like to remind us as a board and those at home is that while I can support the notion of taking a longer, more careful look at what exactly we want to do with the building, that to me points all the more to the necessity of having the boilers changed. That will give us the freedom to in fact take that time, do due diligence if that's what people are calling for, to look again about how to use it, what is the best way to renovate, all of that. That's a fine question, but the boilers are fundamental to keeping the building open during that process of taking another look.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad we have two separate warrant articles.
And I think if there was only one article to vote on at capital budgets, there would have been no vote. And the two articles has forced conversation, and that conversation needs to happen, and we need to continue to vet that conversation. And what was the most, in a sense, the meeting was somewhat enjoyable because every member of capital budget felt that they were able to express their opinion, and everybody at the table was respectful of the other's opinions. And there were a lot of different opinions, and I think that's just reflective of what's going on in the town.
Yeah.
And in the nation.
Right,
Yes.
right. But,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that everybody was respectful, listened to everybody, says a lot for this process.
Okay.
Yeah. Two things jump out at me with regards to Mrs. Hunter's report. Thank you very much. I agree with Madam Chair that it's timely, thoughtful. Thank you for the time, the report, putting the time into it. I'll give you my liaison report after this, but with regards to what you just said, Mrs. Hunter and Madam Chair, thank you for hosting and chairing the meeting that we had last week. Last Wednesday.
It was a great meeting.
We all attended a
Right.
great meeting for the Carroll Community
The
Center. It was
28th, right.
the 28th, and we had approximately 70,
Right.
70 or so
Well
people attended.
Right.
And at that meeting, Mrs. Hunter, I'll just not to bore you with the details, but I thought the professionals who were hosting that meeting, yourself and Mr. Ramsey and Don Mills, and everybody did a very, very good job in terms of the few people who gave presentations. The questions were excellent. Interestingly enough, my comment at that time was, we're having 3 conversations at the same time. And the conversations are, just as you pointed out, in the 2-2-2. 2 people are having conversations about maintenance, which you absolutely articulate. 2 people are having conversations about what else should we do
Right, and
regarding
hold
maintenance.
off.
Hold off.
Right.
Can you defer? Is this a maintenance? How far can we go with the maintenance? And the other 2 people would say, should we do something completely different? So it's the want to haves, need to haves, and then of course our job as the board, we have a responsibility to the people in the building.
Right. That's right. And to the building itself.
As
You
an
know,
asset.
We have to remember our statutory responsibility to maintain our town buildings. That doesn't mean let's pick a year and maybe this year we change a window. This means when something is needed, we have a statutory responsibility to bring to the townspeople the issue that needs to be addressed. The boilers are 90 years old. On
As old as the Oscars.
borrowed time, if there ever was one. Oh, my goodness.
So I'm not at all surprised
Right.
to hear that report, and it is in keeping with what we have heard.
Right.
And it's also probably we're going to hear, we're going to get more clarity from each of those three,
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Right, right.
Right.
which is good.
Right, so open hearing is the 19th of
Right.
March, and I think that there are a lot of boards and commissions.
That's 2 weeks,
Right,
right?
that there are a lot of people waiting to hear what the questions are, how well attended it is, what the focus is, what the emotions are in the room. I think people want to hear it. Good.
I also would just like to say thank you to Kathy Well, who
Oh, my gosh.
organized everything, the tour, the actual, to get 70 people to actually go into the boiler room
I know.
to see the 90-year-old boilers.
Right, that's right. And she did a beautiful job.
Yeah.
And then she came back and chaired the meeting.
Right.
So it was wonderful.
You know, and the big issue here is, what are you voting on? You know, you're not voting on a decision on what to do next. So if you feel as though more diligence needs to get, so it's not a debate on, is the building being used enough? Should it be used for different things? If you feel as though those things need to be looked at, then I think what you have to reconcile yourself with is voting to defer on the 3.4. So it's hard to steer the conversation to what are you voting for. You know, we're voting to complete you're voting for two simple things. A, complete the renovation, and by doing that, you have to bring it up to handicap accessibility.
Well,
So
those
that's
are- right.
$3.4 million. And B, it's the boilers, which, you know, you need heat in the building.
Right.
So it's two
Right.
simple things, and because of emotions and because the waters have been muddied a little bit, a lot of alternative items get discussed.
You also can't ignore, and I think Kathy did a very good job, you did a very good job in framing this conversation has been going on for a very long time.
At least
Right.
15
And
years.
you said the same thing about the boilers. This is a 90-year
90-year conversation. It's a 90-year conversation.
I don't think they talked about it in year 90.
But
Maybe they started in years 89, 88. I'm
So-
thinking year 90, they were good.
when you look at something that has had 6 studies
Right,
done,
right.
there is going to be historical bias for a lot of different reasons, but as you both have said, those are not germane. The historical bias has to be set aside for what to do next. We can debate that, and you please encourage everyone to attend the 19th.
Absolutely, and town meeting. I mean,
And
in
to
other
go
words-
onto the
Right,
website.
right.
There is
Oh,
so
everything is there.
much
That's
information
exactly
on the
right.
website. You know, and information that I forgot, you know, I had looked at maybe in 2010, 2012, but it's really not a bad idea to go back and reread some of this stuff, because you tend to remember points that hit, you know, I can't speak today, but you tend to remember certain things out of every report that you pick up. And maybe it was
Right.
something that you were focused on at the time. So to go back and read it with an open mind is a really good thing, because you do pick up some additional facts and some additional points
Right.
that are
Well,
are
and-
important to this conversation.
If I'm correct, you were on warrant during the question of the bathrooms, am I right? In other words,
No.
you've been involved with some of these decisions too, all along.
I wasn't on warrant then. I think the bathrooms, it
I
was,
think you're a selectman.
I was a
You were
selectman with the
selectman.
bathrooms.
Then, were you on any of the committees in 2010, or?
Well, when this big study was done, so it was 2010, and I was on, there were 4 committees that were, it was broken up into 4 building committees. I remember one was the great room. I was not on that committee. I can't remember what the other 3, public-private partnership. I was on that one.
Okay.
Right, so they were like 4, so the way the committee set it up, they were, ultimately, they narrowed it down to 4 questions to be studied. I know one was the great room, one was public-private partnerships. Do you
I
remember
don't
what the other 2?
Sorry.
There were another 2, and I remember being part of the public-private partnership.
Well, I just mean that you personally have been involved with this building.
Not as much as Kathy.
Not as much as Kathy, no, I know, but still, you know, there's
So
there's
bits
history.
and
there.
pieces, bits and
Right.
pieces. You know, so I know about the studies.
Right. Well, you know.
And I've walked through it with Don Mills numerous times.
Right.
so.
Right. One of the interesting ways that these 2 warrant articles have been characterized, I'm thinking by Chris of Parks and Rec, will be apt to say the boilers are maintenance. Article 15 are improvements. In other words, it's a fine line, and I don't really mean to tease it out separately because I'm afraid that Kathy Weld would say, well, no, but the building really needs all of it, and she has a point. But if you talk about the bare minimum, what I call the drop-dead maintenance item, it's the boilers. And the ADA compliance, we are compliant, but we need to make improvements. The controls, we do have heat in the building with new boilers, we will have heat in the building, but
But it won't help the
will not help
distribution.
in the distribution. The improvements in the lighting and the way the halls are finished and deinstitutionalizing the physical spaces, you could say are very much in the improvement category. So I do think, again, I'm just sort of speaking kind of to both of you from the standpoint of the selectmen, our responsibility of keeping this building well and open, the very bare minimum, in my opinion, are the boilers.
Yeah. Carol Lisbon made a very good point along those same lines. And she really framed that part of the conversation where you're looking at maintenance, then improvements, then all of the other items
Right.
that come next.
Right.
So it's,
Right.
and where do you draw that line? So,
Right.
Mr. Ramsey, when it comes to commenting on women that I work with and how long they have done anything, I learned a long time ago not to comment in any way, shape,
Thank you,
or form.
Mr. Jeffers.
Never. You always just say, I don't recall. Can't recall how long ago that was. You never get in trouble that way.
Good to remember. Thank you.
It's just Russ. So you're,
Anything else for the good of the order?
That's it.
No? Good. I would take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Hope you get power back soon, and please stay safe. Thank you.